in the grand, tragic theater of World War II, where innovation and desperation danced a deadly tango, few stories are as poignant, as unbelievable as that of the Shinano. Imagine a warship of truly colossal proportions, an aircraft carrier so vast it dwarfed all contemporaries, a steel leviathan born from the lineage of the mightiest battleships ever conceived. This was the Imperial Japanese Navy's Shinano, a vessel of immense promise and even greater secrecy. Yet, her legend is not one of glorious battles fought or victories won. Instead, it is a tale of a rushed birth, a fleeting existence, and a catastrophic demise on her very first and only voyage. She was meant to be a bastion of Japan's fading naval power, but became a tomb for over 1,000 souls, sinking in less than a day, earning the grim distinction of being the largest warship ever sent to the depths by a submarine. This is the story of that doomed titan, the Shinano. The genesis of Shinano is intrinsically linked to Japan's ambitious Yamato-class battleship program. These were to be the ultimate symbols of naval power, armed with monstrous 18.1-inch guns designed to outfight anything afloat. The lead ship, Yamato, and her sister Musashi were legends in their own right. Shinano was laid down on May 4, 1940, at the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal, destined to be the third of these sea dragons. Construction proceeded under a veil of extreme secrecy, the dockyard hidden from prying eyes, as Japan poured its resources into creating these leviathans. For nearly 2 years, her hull took shape, the heavy steel of a super battleship promising unmatched strength. But the tides of war wait for no ship, no matter how powerful. In June 1942, the Battle of Midway delivered a hammer blow to the Imperial Japanese Navy. 4 of Japan's finest fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were lost in a matter of hours, taking with them hundreds of vital aircraft and, crucially, their irreplaceable, experienced pilots. This single battle fundamentally altered the calculus of naval warfare in the Pacific. Suddenly, aircraft carriers, not battleships, were the undisputed queens of the ocean. Japan, reeling from its losses, desperately needed to replenish its carrier fleet. Eyes turned to the incomplete hull of the third Yamato-class vessel. By mid-1942, Shinano's hull was approximately 45% complete, with much of her lower structure and machinery already in place. To continue her as a battleship seemed a waste of resources in a war now dominated by naval aviation. The decision was made. Shinano would be converted into an aircraft carrier. However, her advanced state as a battleship hull imposed significant constraints. She could not easily be redesigned into a fast fleet carrier like the Shokaku or Zuikaku class. Instead, the IJN envisioned Shinano as something unique, a heavily armored support carrier. Her primary role would be to act as a mobile rear base, transporting aircraft, spare parts, and munitions to replenish frontline carriers or island bases. She would also possess a formidable repair capability. While she would carry her own small complement of aircraft for self-defense and limited offensive actions, plans suggested around 47 planes, her main strength was to be her survivability and support functions. She was, in essence, to be a floating fortress, an unsinkable offshore airfield. Engineering this transformation was a monumental task. Shinano's final design was a testament to her hybrid origins. She retained much of the Yamato class's incredibly thick armor, including a substantial waterline belt, and most notably for a carrier, an armored flight deck. This flight deck, composed of 75 millimeters, or about 3 inches, of armor plate over 20 millimeters, roughly 0.8 inches, of steel, was designed to withstand 500 kilogram or 1,100 pound bombs. This was a feature common in British carrier design but exceptionally rare for Japanese carriers, with only the Taiho sharing a similar level of flight deck protection. Her dimensions were staggering for the era. Upon completion, Shinano had an overall length of approximately 266 meters, which is 872 feet, a beam of 36.3 meters or 119 feet, and a full load displacement of around 71,890 metric tons, or about 70,750 long tons. This made her unequivocally the largest aircraft carrier in the world, a title she would hold until the commissioning of the American supercarrier USS Forrestal in 1954. Her machinery, identical to her battleship half-sisters, consisted of 4 sets of cabin-geared steam turbines, generating 150,000 shaft horsepower, giving her a designed top speed of around 27 knots, or 31 miles per hour. Her aircraft facilities included a single, massive hangar, 163.4 meters, 536 feet, long and up to 33.8 meters, 111 feet wide, though it was not as efficiently laid out for rapid aircraft cycling as those on dedicated fleet carriers. 2 elevators, one large and one smaller, moved aircraft between the hangar and the flight deck. Beyond her own planned air group of around 47 aircraft, primarily Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Yokosuka D4Y Suize dive bombers, and Nakajima B6N Tenzan torpedo bombers, she had stowage for up to 120 additional crated aircraft for ferrying. Her defensive armament was formidable, boasting 16 127mm 5-inch dual-purpose guns and a dense array of anti-aircraft weaponry, including an initial plan for 35 triple-mounted 25mm cannons, later augmented with 40 more single mounts, and 12 28-barrel 120mm anti-aircraft rocket launchers. However, the construction of this Titan was plagued by the harsh realities of Japan's deteriorating war situation. By 1944, Japan was facing severe shortages of raw materials, skilled labor, and time. The Allied bombing campaign was intensifying, and the need for new warships was desperate. Consequently, Shinano's conversion was rushed. Corners were cut. Secrecy remained paramount, but the quality of workmanship suffered. Critical systems were left incomplete or inadequately tested. Most dangerously, the network of watertight compartments, essential for a warship's survival after damage, was compromised. Many bulkheads were not properly sealed where pipes and cables passed through, and numerous manholes were reportedly left open or unfinished. Air pressure testing of compartments for watertight integrity, a standard procedure, was largely skipped in the haste to get her to sea. These hidden flaws would prove to be her Achilles' heel. Shinano was launched with little fanfare on October 8, 1944. Even this event was marred by an accident when a caisson at the dry dock entrance failed prematurely, causing the massive hull to surge forward and damage its bow. Repairs delayed her formal commissioning until November 19, 1944, under the command of Captain Toshio Abe. Her crew was a mix of regular naval personnel, many of whom were inexperienced or hastily trained, and a large contingent of shipyard workers, some 300 of them, who were needed to complete her fitting out. The atmosphere aboard was one of intense pressure and unspoken anxiety. Japan was losing the war, and Shinano represented one of its last great hopes, however ill-defined that hope might be. Her first orders were to proceed from Yokosuka to the safer waters of Kure Naval Base on the Inland Sea. There, her remaining fitting out, including the installation of more anti-aircraft guns and final systems integration, would be completed, and she would undergo proper sea trials. She was not yet ready for combat. Indeed, she was barely ready for sea. On board, she carried a sensitive cargo, 50 Oka rocket-propelled suicide aircraft destined for use against the Allied fleets. In the early evening of November 28, 1944, at approximately 18 hours, Shinano slipped out of Yokosuka Bay. She was escorted by 3 Kagero-class destroyers, Isokaze, Yukikaze, and Hamakaze. The night was dark, offering some measure of concealment, but the voyage was fraught with peril. Allied submarines, particularly those of the United States Navy, prowled Japanese coastal waters with increasing impunity. Almost immediately, Shinano encountered problems. Some of her propeller shaft bearings began to overheat, a sign of her rushed preparation. Captain Abe was forced to reduce speed from the planned 20 knots to 18 knots to prevent serious mechanical damage. This reduction in speed made her an even more vulnerable target. Unbeknownst to the Shinano's crew, she had already been found. Lurking in the darkness was the USS Archerfish, a Balao-class submarine under the command of Commander Joseph F. Enright. Archerfish had been on patrol for weeks without a significant contact. At around 20:48, Archerfish's radar operator detected a large contact, initially assessed as a cruiser or perhaps a tanker, at a range of about 12 miles, 19 kilometers. As Archerfish closed, the target's immense size became apparent. Enright, initially skeptical, soon realized he was tracking something truly exceptional. Though Shinano's existence was such a closely guarded secret that she was not listed in Allied naval intelligence. For several hours, Archerfish shadowed the Japanese task force, maneuvering to gain an attack position. Captain Abe, aware of the submarine threat, ordered Shinano to commence zigzagging maneuvers. His lookouts also spotted Archerfish around 22:45, and one of the escorting destroyers, Isokas, briefly broke off to investigate, dropping some depth charges, though Archerfish was not damaged. Abe, perhaps overconfident in Shinano's speed and armor, or perhaps believing the submarine was a scout for a larger American force he wished to avoid, made a fateful decision. Instead of aggressively hunting the submarine with his escorts, he chose to try and outrun it, maintaining his course towards Kure. This decision, coupled with a later course change, played directly into Commander Enright's hands. By the early morning hours of November 29th, Archerfish was in an ideal firing position. Shinano, in the midst of a turn to the southwest, inadvertently exposed her massive starboard flank to the American submarine. At 3:15, Commander Enright gave the order to fire. Archerfish launched a spread of 6 Mark 14 torpedoes from her bow tubes at a range of approximately 1,400 yards, 1,280 meters. Enright and his crew then braced for the impact and the inevitable counterattack. Aboard Shinano, lookouts spotted the wakes of the incoming torpedoes. Captain Abe ordered an emergency hard turn, but the colossal carrier, over 870 feet, 265 meters long, responded sluggishly. It was too late. 4 of the 6 torpedoes slammed into Shinano's starboard side, between the anti-torpedo bulge and the waterline. The explosions rocked the giant ship. The first torpedo struck near the stern, flooding refrigerated stores and an empty aviation gasoline storage tank. The second hit further aft, rupturing the No. 3 engine room's outboard shaft alley. The third found its mark amidships, flooding the No. 3 boiler room and causing casualties. The fourth torpedo struck near the No. 1 propeller shaft, flooding more machinery spaces and compressor rooms. Initially, the damage, while serious, was not considered immediately fatal by Shinano's officers. Her armored belt, inherited from her battleship design, was believed capable of withstanding such impacts. Captain AA felt the ship was stable and ordered her to maintain speed, hoping to outrun any further attacks and reach shallow waters. This decision, however, proved disastrous. The continued high speed put immense pressure on the damaged hull, worsening the flooding. Moreover, the extent of the internal damage and the deficiencies in her construction were not yet apparent. The true nightmare was just beginning to unfold. The rushed workmanship and incomplete systems now revealed their deadly consequences. Water poured into the ship not just through the torpedo holes, but also through countless unsealed openings in bulkheads, leaking rivets and poorly fitted pipes. Watertight doors, crucial for isolating flooded compartments, either failed to close properly or were reportedly left open. The ship lacked sufficient pumping capacity, and many of the pumps that were available were inoperable due to power loss from flooded compartments, or because they were still being installed by civilian workers who had little idea how to operate them under duress. Damage control efforts were chaotic and ineffective. The crew, largely green and unfamiliar with their massive, complex ship, struggled to comprehend the situation and implement effective countermeasures. Counterflooding, a standard procedure to correct a list by intentionally flooding compartments on the opposite side of the ship, was either not ordered in time or was carried out incorrectly, exacerbating the problem. The list to starboard grew steadily and alarmingly. As hours passed, the situation became increasingly dire. Shinano was taking on water at an alarming rate. Compartment after compartment flooded. The ship's electrical power began to fail, plunging sections into darkness and rendering more equipment useless. The starboard list increased to 10 degrees, then 15, then 20. By dawn, it was clear that Shinano was in mortal danger. Captain Abe, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, ordered a change of course towards Shionomisaki Point, hoping to beach the crippled carrier. But Shinano was already doomed. The destroyers Isokaze and Yukikaze came alongside in a desperate attempt to pass over pumps and assist with damage control, but the heavy seas and Shinano's severe list made this nearly impossible. Some lines parted, and there was a minor collision. By 7, the list had reached 20 degrees. Water was now flooding over the hangar deck. The ship was slowly, inexorably dying. The realization that the unsinkable giant was, in fact, sinking spread despair among the crew. Around 10:18, with the list exceeding 30 degrees and the ship clearly beyond saving, Captain Abe gave the heartbreaking order to abandon ship. The Emperor's portrait was transferred to one of the escorting destroyers. Discipline, for the most part, held, but the process of abandoning the enormous, heavily listing vessel was perilous. Many men were trapped below decks, others were washed overboard or succumbed to exhaustion in the cold November waters. At approximately 10:57 a.m. on November 29, 1944, just under 8 hours after the torpedoes struck, and a mere 17 hours after she had proudly steamed out of Yokosuka, the Shinano capsized to starboard and sank stern first. She plunged into the depths about 160 nautical miles, 296 kilometers or 184 statute miles southeast of Cape Moroto, taking with her Captain Toshio Abe and an estimated 1,435 officers, men, and civilian shipyard workers. The escorting destroyers managed to rescue 1,080 survivors, many of them plucked from the oily, debris-strewn water. The loss of Shinano was a significant blow to Japanese morale, but by late 1944, her potential strategic impact, had she survived, was questionable. Japan lacked experienced pilots, aircraft, and fuel to operate such a vessel to its full potential. The U.S. Navy's post-war analysis concluded that Shinano's sinking was primarily due to the catastrophic flooding caused by her incomplete watertight integrity and the crew's inability to implement effective damage control, rather than the torpedo hits themselves being overwhelmingly destructive against a fully prepared warship of her size and armor. Had her compartments been properly sealed and her crew fully trained, she might well have survived 4 torpedo hits. Shinano's story is one of immense ambition undone by hubris, desperation, and the unforgiving realities of war. She was a ship of superlatives. The largest, the most heavily armored, and ultimately, one of the shortest-lived major warships of World War II. Her design was a unique compromise, a fascinating glimpse into the shifting doctrines of naval warfare. Her end was a stark reminder that even the mightiest creations of war are vulnerable, not just to enemy action, but to their own inherent flaws and the human errors that conceal their fate. The great Shinano, the secret supercarrier, remains a largely forgotten titan, a ghost of the Pacific, her wreck undiscovered, her legend a cautionary tale whispered among the echoes of the waves. She holds a permanent, if tragic, place in naval history. The largest warship ever to be sunk by a submarine, a record forged in the dark waters off Japan in the final, desperate year of a global conflagration. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the story of the IJN Shinano. It's a stark reminder that in war, even the greatest designs can be undone by haste and circumstance. If you found this journey through naval history as fascinating as we did, and you want to uncover more stories of legendary warships and epic battles, then make sure you are subscribed to our channel. Hitting that subscribe button means you won't miss our next exploration into the annals of military history. What do you think? Could a fully completed Shinano have changed anything in the Pacific War? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.